You know how some folks will say that they have finally landed their Holy Grail record? Well, I'm not quite here to say that, but I did finally find a record that's eluded me. And no, it's not a rare pressing of the Beatles, Rubber Soul, or Dark Side of the Moon. It's a fair bet that it's by an artist many of you have probably never heard of. You may know the hit song from the record, and if you do and you can remember when it came out, you're probably close to my age, I would suspect. But for me, the search is finally over. A Holy Grail record can mean, different things to different people. It can be an extremely hard to find, record that collectors would just love to add to their collection and are always on the lookout for. Some that, come to mind would be, the Beatles' Butcher cover for Yesterday and Today, and also the picture disc version of Madonna's Erotica. One that I'd love to find is a 1937 copy of Robert Johnson's Terraplane Blues. It's a 10-inch shellac record, so even if I found it, I'd have no way to play it. There's also some records, while not exactly rare, many collectors would love to have them because of the story behind that particular record. And I have a couple I want to show you. For example, Lynyrd Skynyrd's Street Survivors. Most folks who own this album own this copy with this particular cover. But then again, there are those folks who own this copy of the same album, but with a different cover. And the story behind this is tragic. This version right here was released, just days before the band's plane crashed. It's an awful story. Six people were killed, including 3 members of the band. I won't get into the details here, but just know that the record company, at the urging of family members, pulled this version and replaced it with this version. Now, if you own this version, it's probably not worth a lot, but it does have a story to tell, and it is a big piece of music history. Another one, again, not extremely valuable, but another cool piece of music history, is John Fogerty's 1985 Centerfield. I believe I bought this copy actually the day it came out, but it has on it a song called Zans Can't Dance. And that song was a dig at Fantasy Records owner Saul Zaentz. To avoid a defamation suit, John Fogerty redid the song and called it Vans Can't Dance, and they reissued the album. So any pressings after 1984 will have the new version of the song. I say new version. That song's 40 years old. Anyway. And then there are Holy Grail records that are extremely personal, and that's what I recently found. And it starts with this, Lee Michaels' Fifth. I mentioned the hit song that it contains. Do you know what it is? Does anyone have any guesses? I'll give you a minute. All right, not a minute, just a couple seconds. Okay, it's this one. Do you know what I mean? It was released in 1971. And man, I wish I could play it for you right now, but copyright infringement. Anyway, this was my dad's copy. He bought it when it first came out. And when I was a kid, I used to sneak it out of his office to listen to it. I love this album, and I love that song. The problem was, the record has a long scratch on it when my dad owned it that goes right through another song I really like called Oak Fire. So when my dad passed in 2001, I inherited his copy. And I loved to play it, but the fact that there was a scratch on it always bothered me. So I did have the CD version at one time, but the CD version, I don't know, for some reason just didn't compare to the vinyl version. Can't exactly explain why, and maybe it's all in my head. But anyhow, I decided at that time that I would replace this record. So I eventually tracked down another copy of this record. And again, this was pressed in 1971. I believe these were only pressed in 71 and 79. I'm pretty sure about that. This cover was only pressed in only came with the 1971 pressing. Problem with this one is it has 2 scratches, and they're audible scratches. That's always a disappointment. And to think when I bought it, it was sold to me as a mint condition. So I expected at least near mint. I mean, how do you miss a couple of scratches? It's not even, I guess, maybe good? I don't know. I'd have to look at it again, but still, 2 scratches, so strike 2 on this album. Being that this one was actually worse than my dad's copy, I was stuck to listening to my dad's copy with the scratch through Oak Fire. And I decided to try again. So just recently I was on Discogs and I was just scrolling around and the thought hit me about the record and I thought, yeah, I want to see if it's out there, see if somebody else is selling it. And yes, they were. And I found a 1971 pressing that was sealed. Yeah, sealed. If you know me or have been watching this channel, you probably are aware that I have somewhat of an aversion to sealed records that are decades old. I've been burned way too many times getting a decades old record and finding out that it's warped. So that's my aversion. But I don't blame the sellers. I mean, it's not the seller's fault. You never know where records have been stored, especially for decades. It could have been stored under the worst conditions, but I'm not going to get into all of that now. I've talked about this on a previous video, and you don't want to hear me rant about sealed records. The point is, I was both nervous and excited about buying this, but I really wanted a good copy of this record, a good clean copy. So I rolled the dice. And luckily for me, it really didn't cost a lot because it's not like this record is in high demand and not many people know about it or remember it, but they should. It's so good. And I really wish he had released more like this. So the record showed up the other day and I held my breath and I carefully cut the slit on the seal. And I usually don't keep the seal, but I wanted to for this record just because it has a lot of memories and I've been waiting to get this for a long time, and it's a 50-year-old record that had never seen the light of day. And the record was perfect. No warps, obviously no scratches, at least you'd hope not. There were are a couple of paper scuffs on the record, which it's not much you can do about that. It's a paper sleeve and they will scuff during time and handling, especially being stored away somewhere for 50 years. So it's been cleaned and I placed it in an anti-static inner sleeve and it's in great condition. So this is my own personal Holy Grail record. And I hope to be enjoying this a few decades more, if I have a few decades more. And to be honest, this is what the joy of vinyl is all about.
It's mine. It's all mine.
Especially when you consider a 50-year-old piece of plastic can hold so many memories. So what about you? Do you have a personal Holy Grail record? Do you have it, or are you still looking for it? I would love to hear from you. Just comment below, click subscribe. You can always get in touch with me through the website. And as always, thank you for watching. And until next time, stay safe, take care of yourself, and enjoy your records.